another Renae's Corner video. I'm Renae, and today is video number 3 in our Clinical Psychology Debunked series. So last week we talked about how to become a clinical psychologist, and the week before that we talked about what do clinical psychologists do and where do they work. And so if you are interested in any of those two topics, I suggest that you go view those videos first and then come back here. And so I've been thinking about what would be the best way to talk about the Psy.D versus the Ph.D. And I think the best way to start this video is to start with the clinical training models and then go into really the differences between the two degrees. And so if you are interested in learning about the differences between clinical psychology, Ph.D, and the Psy.D, be sure to stay tuned and we'll get right into it right now. Okay, so how I like to think about clinical psychology training, I think about it along a spectrum. And so there's clinical science, and then there's scientist practitioner, and then there is scholar practitioner, or scholar practitioner. And so it's along this spectrum where we really find the real nitty-gritty differences among clinical psychology programs. So the clinical science is really a PhD sort of model for people who are going into academic careers. So this is people who want to be professors, this is people who want to train future clinical psychologists, this is people who do sort of like admin work, it's becoming like the director of clinical training, things like that. This model, I'm looking down because I took notes. This model suggests that we, as clinical psychologists, we really need to be competent in the science of psychology before we can really be competent in the clinical practica of psychology. And so this one is really, this sort of model of training is really focused on producing original scholarly works of psychology, and really that psychology focuses primarily on like clinical psych or abnormal psychology topics. So then next is the scientist practitioner model. This is the model that my program follows, and all of the programs that I apply to follow this model because this is the model that really resonated with me in my soul. That was really dramatic, but this is the model that really resonated with me. And so it's sort of the balance between the research and the clinical practical or the applied clinical work side. And so it's really, for me, it was like the best of both worlds. I get to have this research part, and then I also get to really be strong and competent in my clinical skills. And so this type of model is typically PhD. I haven't come across any Psy.Ds that follow this model, but there might be. I don't know every program in the whole world. And so this one is really, like I said, focused on both research and clinical work. And it trains psychologists who really can do either or, clinical work or going to academia or going to hospitals. It really, I think, is more generalist training for psychologists. And so then the last one is scholar practitioner model, and this is the one that most Psy.D programs follow. So it's similar to the models that medical schools follow or law schools follow, where it really trains doctors to, you know, really hone in on their clinical skills and really hone in on the applied clinical side of being a psychologist. And so even though they're really focused on this clinical, the applied clinical skills, they still have some research, but the research is really focused on the application of clinical procedures, or how clinical like interventions are working or not working, or how a certain disorder is being treated, and how to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, how certain clinical disorders are responding to certain treatments or certain interventions and things like that. And so those are the 3 models. So there's the scholar or the science, okay, gotta get it together because all these words sound the same. Okay, so there's the clinical science model that's really the research heavy, you know, really gung-ho about creating new knowledge heavy version of clinical psychology. There's a scientist practitioner that does sort of, has the best of both worlds. It does research, heavy research part, and also heavy applied clinical skills part. And then there's the scholar practitioner model, and that's really heavy on the clinical skills and just like a little bit of research. And what I didn't say about the clinical science model is that they still do clinical work, but it's just not as much. So now I think that it's a good time to talk about the Psy.D and the Ph.D program. And so how I've been thinking about the Psy.D and the Psy.D and the Ph.D program is that they're very similar. They're like Venn diagrams, and as you saw with the different training models, they're all very similar. Like, there's just the proportion of work done in the two domains of research and clinical work are different. And so for the PhD, it's traditionally thought of as being this research degree. And so for the program that I'm in, it follows a scientist practitioner. So I get both the research and the applied clinical skills. And then if you're in a clinical science PhD, clinical psychology PhD, you're really getting more of that research heavy part and then just like a little bit of clinical skills. And then the Psy.D is really focused on this applied clinical skills and just like a little bit of research. And so how two of my friends have described it as the proportion of clinical work that they do is so much larger than the proportion of research. And that's kind of seems to be the theme across different clinical psychology programs. It really just, it varies so much, but that seems to be like the overarching idea. And so I will say what's in common is that both PhDs and Psy.Ds do dissertations and thesis and conduct research. And then we're all still doing clinical hours. It's just how much clinical work and how many clinical hours we get might be different depending on if you do the PhD or the Psy.D. And so I really encourage you, if you are looking to do a PhD or a Psy.D in clinical psychology, to really look at the programs and see what it is that really fits your needs. So if you're looking to do more applied clinical work, then it might fit you better to do a Psy.D, but like if you're like me and you're kind of on the fence, it might fit you better to do the PhD. It really depends on what you're looking for in a program, but I highly recommend that as you are searching for clinical psychology programs, to really look through their website, look through their mission statements, and look through their values to see if their values and the training things that they're doing at that university will fit your needs. And so that's basically it for today's video. Sorry, my dog is like over there tripping, so that's why I keep looking over that way. Basically, that's the end of today's video. I hope this clears up some of the air about Psy.Ds and PhDs. They're very, very similar, but they're also, each one is unique. And I hope that the training models help you conceptualize how they are different. Lost my train of thought. Be sure to follow me over on my social medias. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those good things. I will be starting to post more on Facebook, and so if you are a Facebooker, be sure to find me over there. All of the links are down in the descriptions under Linktree, and it says like social media, and then there's a link and it leads you to all my social media. Be sure to like, comment, and share this video with people that you know are interested in clinical psychology, and I will see you guys next week. Peace out, and I love you all so much. Bye.